with me, Angela Doyle Stewart.
And Karen Whelan Emery. I love it.
And this is the space where we talk about truth, love, and real life. Today's episode, we're digging into a topic that so many of us whisper about, but rarely talk about openly. Although I think maybe more so openly lately, especially online. Um, we all know about the classic image of cheating, physical betrayal, affairs, lines crossed. But what about the small, sneaky gestures, the late night texts, the online flirting, the secret friendships, especially in the age of social media? The murky grey area is what people are calling micro cheating. So we're going to delve into that now, and we're going to draw on real life experience as well. No holds barred, Karen. What do you think?
No, it's fine. Well, you know what? Micro cheating is actually it's only a word I came to know it was in existence because of my daughter who's 20. And, I just can't keep up with the dialogues and the labels that are out there because there's so many of them. She was looking at me as if to say, how do you not know what that is? And I was like, well, I don't know what that is. What is micro cheating? So, micro cheating, in case there's anyone who is as innocent as I was out there, is a term used to describe small, subtle behaviors that fall short of traditional cheating, but still cross emotional or relational boundaries in a romantic relationship. They often seem minor or harmless on the surface, yet they create a sense of secrecy, emotional displacement, or inappropriate intimacy with somebody outside of the partnership. And for me, like a clear boundary is would you, the person who is engaging in micro cheating, like, would you do those things if your partner is standing right beside you? That to me is just such an important conversation, an awareness to have. And also, I understand it's not about controlling, because a lot of the time I find when something is going on, we quickly can doubt ourselves and question our own intuition or our own gut reaction to knowing something is askew. So I want to separate because I don't want people getting the wrong impression. Like, we're not talking about being controlling, and I want to separate the two.
Mm.
Like, because I understand with an insecure attachment style, a person can become very insecure and controlling in the relationship in order to feel safe and can control what the person is doing and whom they're texting. So we're not talking about that. We are talking about somebody who might be sending secretive text messages and, sending text messages that I would say, like, whether it's secret ones or it's emotionally sharing, they're sharing emotional things about themselves, like vulnerable parts of themselves in that exchange with somebody else. And that's something I did encounter, going back, whereby my partner, 14 years, was starting to communicate with an old friend, ex, and he was sharing to her things that he wasn't sharing in the relationship with me. And my emotional self felt very betrayed. Like, I could feel this feeling of being betrayed and hurt. But then I questioned Karen, I questioned myself, going, like, is there any harm in it? And that's the confusion it stirred up in me. So that's like probably my coming in at it, my personal awareness of it. And because I didn't listen to myself, which I feel a lot of us as women can do, I didn't listen to my like intuition that knew this was not okay. It took many weeks and many months where it continued, and it snowballed into being more sharing. And then, he had her photograph album from when they were together. Like, the album was probably 20 years old, and I found it, and he was like, oh, I just cleared it out of my room in my mother's house. And again, that put me into place of questioning myself, you know, but now I can honestly say, no, that was the secrecy part to him. Like, he was looking at the photographs of her, he was connecting with her and sharing things with her that he felt he couldn't speak to me because we were going through a big stressor in our relationship, and the stress caused us it triggered both of us and caused us to just end up always falling into conflict. So he sought safety out in another woman instead of honoring the relationship and finding a way to navigate through what was a big stressor in a relationship. And now, when I look back on it, because it all exploded and it did end up resulting in a full blown affair, um, now when I look back, I'm like, wow, I knew that knowing when I first read the first message, that knowing that this was a crossing of a boundary and that emotional feeling of feeling punched in the stomach and betrayed, that emotion always stuck. It never left. I was correct in my encounter and experience of that. I was absolutely apt in my, we'll call it attunement to the conversation between the two of them and the subtlety. It was almost like, yeah, I could see the words, but I could also pick up on that subtle exchange between the two of them. I could tell in the conversation at the time it was over Skype, I could tell that they were forging a deep emotional intimacy. So, how could, of course, that is a betrayal because intimacy is not just about sex. Intimacy is like how safe we all feel in a relationship, whether that's in the communication atmosphere of the relationship, the emotional atmosphere of the relationship, the tactile atmosphere of the relationship, and then, of course, the sexual aspect of the relationship. So, when I look back, I can see, wow, I was right to have felt that very first feeling of betrayal, but I went against that in Karen. I doubted it. I listened to what he had to say. I was like, okay, maybe it is me reading into it a bit too much. I really put it back on me when it was never even to be put back on me in the first place. So, I wanted to share that with people because I think the biggest hurt in it for me now when I look back was also, of course, what was taking place, but primarily it was more so me not knowing how to really trust in what I knew and what I was experiencing in the moment. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you looked back now, what would you do different?
Oh my God, I would have acted on my knowing. I would not, like right now, uh, wish myself right now because it took me. Like that relationship breakdown was so fucking painful and it hurt. It hurt everybody. It hurt my kids as well. Really, really did. It really, really hurt. It took me to a very low point in my womanness, if we call it that, my woman essence, because the game, the energy of manipulation that it snowballed into. So first, obviously for him and her, it was, he ran to somebody to lean on somebody to talk about the difficulty he was having. And we weren't married, but we were 14 years together. We were engaged. We had a daughter. He had very actively partaken in, rearing and being a father figure towards my son. When we met, I was with my son for the first 8 years of Aaron's life, and then he came on the picture. So he was very much around my son from age 8 and for 14 years of his life. So, when they began to, and she was always like, they were friends, they were in a relationship for only a year, they remained friends. And she wasn't really a friend who was on the scene all the time. Every now and then they would very friendly in a very friendly exchange would reach out by an email going, hey, how are you? How's everything? And a little update that way. And I saw that, and there was nothing in that. There was nothing, and it never bothered me. And I would say to him, oh, so and so is in contact with you again. He was like, yeah, she just reached out. She'll be home in Ireland in the summer, and she was hoping maybe she could catch up with us. And it was always us. So, I felt safe. There was nothing. Then we hit a very difficult time in our relationship, and it triggered him so much that he would just gaslight me in the relationship, and it all got turned on me. So there was no room in the conversation for him to look at his own contribution to what was causing the stress. It was all about what I was doing. And then, of course, when you hear that, you get defensive, your armor comes on, your anger comes up, and then it goes into this. Both of you are just coming at each other, and nobody is hearing the other because you're both coming at it from a wounded place. You know, his woundedness is activating your woundedness, and so forth and so forth. And then I saw on Skype, this reaching out and conversation with her. And, he was sharing to her what felt like should have been brought to me. And that's how I felt when I read it. And it really hit me in the heart where I got an awful shock. It felt very viscerally. I remember the feeling. I remember it in the other house, in the kitchen, and just this visceral feeling of dread. That dread feeling where, like, oh my God, everything drains out of you. And your nervous system just comes online going, I'm not safe, I'm not safe. And I could feel in the language, I could feel the subjective subtlety between the two of them and the emotions that were almost offered to each other. It's like I could really pick it all up. I could really pick up on it. And, I brought it to him and he was like, gosh, no, why are you reading into it like that? So again, it was about me and the way I'm reading into it. So that then did create in me a bit of a second guess. And am I reading into this too much? Am I too wounded that I am reading into this too much? And that's what I did. I emotionally dumped it back on myself. So it got to the extent whereby, I mean, the power of our intuition, and I think maybe that's an important thing to note for women, like the power of our intuition. So it got to a place where the fights kept on happening. And I remember very clearly looking at him and going, this is not love. Love would not hurt a person to this degree. I cannot call this love anymore. There is no love here. Like, to hurt me at the level in the conversation in which he was, I was like, love would not do that to the person they love. They just wouldn't. And I got that clarity in me. And I just looked at him and I said, I actually think it's very important that we separate. And 3 months before that, I had asked him to stop being in communication with her. I had shared that I was starting to feel very uncomfortable, knowing that he was unveiling his emotional side to another woman because he feels he can't bring it to me. And he said, okay, I will. And he did. So when I did end it with him, I just said, and if you reach out to her, please just don't do it like now, like honor us and let's in a very clean way try and separate. A week later, it was my 40th birthday. I woke up after having this extraordinary dream, the power of intuition. And this is the intuition dream. In my dream, I dreamt. So, to give context, so people can keep up with my dream, in my real life, this is not the dream. In my real life, my son's father left the relationship 3 weeks before I gave birth to Aaron. We know this, I shared this before. And Aaron's dad did end up back with his ex and he did get married to her. This is truth. Okay. So I'm in my dream and I'm in my bedroom in my aunt's house because I lived with my aunt when I was like 15 for a little while. And I take out a picture. Sorry, no, the whole room is everything is of Aaron's father's stuff, his clothes. And then I take a picture out of the bag, and now the picture is actually my daughter's dad. And it's an old picture of him with his ex. It's a picture I would have seen in their photo album. But the picture, I'm looking at it and I walk to the window, and in the garden is my daughter's father. Let's call him Philip. It's his sister, and this is in the dream. And she's looking at me and she points back into the bedroom. And I look behind me, and the bedroom changes into the house I was currently living in. And I look at the photograph, and the photograph changes in my hand to him and her in the present moment, and they're together in it. And I wake up out of my dream going, wow, he's actually in a relationship with her. And this is a week after we separated. And he came back because we had separated and he was in the spare room. And he came in and I called him and I said, I just had the strangest dream. And I shared the dream with him and he went scarlet, scarlet red. And I was like, wow, you're actually in a relationship with her. And he just went scarlet. And I said, you cannot be in this house. If you're now in a relationship with another woman, we cannot be separating amicably. I need you to leave this house straight away. So he left the house, but then he wanted to cover up everything and he put her in his phone as a guy's name, Tim, a guy he was in college with in London to hide her from the scene of the crime, we'll call it. So he would come into the house and, again, my boundaries were a little bit like, they weren't as solid. Like he would just walk into my house and put on the kettle as if he lived there. And I was started to say to him, you just can't walk into my home. You need to knock at the door. You need to be welcomed into my home. You can't just come in. You don't live here anymore. So he had a hard time in keeping a boundary and keeping the separation. So anyway, it turned out, when I just knew the lies, I could feel it. And I don't know about you, Angela, but I'm a type of woman when I know something in the bones of me and a person tells me something, if it's not in alignment to what I can feel in my own being, I know I'm being lied to. Like I can feel it. I just because the regulation doesn't happen. It's like, no, you're not telling me. Like vibes don't lie. I love that phrase. I love it. And I get that with people. I know, and I'm gentle with it because sometimes, therapeutically, I will mind the shame energy and the guilt energy of somebody, so I don't come after it. But when you're my fucking ex and you've already lied to me and you have emotionally cheated on me, um, then I'm going to come after it. So I just knew he was lying. He'd come in and he would get upset and say, I don't have it in my heart to be with anybody. I'm not with her at all. And he was doing that to have access to the house. He would drive all the way down an hour. So, of course, he wanted to be able to come in and sit around the fire, have a nice cup of tea, be in the comfort of his daughter and my son. So he was going to say anything just to get access, basically. So anyway, one day he left his phone there, and my poor daughter, she had her fingerprint embedded on his phone because she used to play games on it. And when he was up in the bathroom, I just said, "Come here, can you unlock your dad's phone for me? I just need to get one of my old photographs out of it. I'm terrible." Anyway, she did. She unlocked it, and I went into his email first, and here was a message from her. Let's call her Mary. And Mary had written to him within 4 days saying, hey, long time no speak. There is this meditation course coming up in London. Maybe I remembered you had said you were thinking of going to London. Maybe this is still of interest to you. I thought I would send it over. So I read that and I went, oh, maybe I am wrong. Maybe they're not in a relationship. And then I remembered him talking about Tim, all of a sudden, a guy when he was in college in London back on the scene. So I went into WhatsApp and I clicked on Tim. Tim was actually Mary. And in the text messages were, can't wait to see you next weekend in London. Here's your flight boarding pass. I love you deeply. We'll be in this hotel. And I just remember like this betrayal again of like, why would you manipulate me? I'm actually a really decent human being. And had you just honored the truth when I knew the truth, we would have navigated our separation with a bit more healthy energy and integrity. Like, he took this into a place it didn't need to go into. And I remember reading it, and I remember my poor nervous system going into this shaken out energy. And I started to shake out involuntary. I couldn't control it. My whole body, just the shock of the level of betrayal from somebody I thought I knew of 14 years, that I had given so much of myself into the relationship, mothered, nurtured, loved it, loved my little family. And I remember like he just came out of the bathroom and I turned into, rightly so, a lunatic. Rightly so. And I'm going to honor that in me. I went ballistic. I was screaming. Um, and I just threw his stuff, whatever stuff was left in the spare room down the stairs, told him to get out. So I would not then let him even park outside my house. It was like, no, you've you've done everything you can to destroy what I would call a very compassionate separation. So for me now, what only can keep me safe is that I don't actually see you again. I don't have to look at you and I don't have to deal with you. And I was like, maintenance can be paid into my bank account on this day. Your daughter can walk out, absolutely out of the house and jump in the car, no problem. But I won't be coming out with her. And I will communicate with you, but it'll only ever be on our daughter. And, I was devastated because it made my daughter then have to go through a very, very challenging and very, very tough relationship because she discovered that her dad had lied, was lying to her, had lied to her mother, that he was with another woman. And it was so devastating for her at her age. She was only 12, to have to like emotionally handle all of that. Like it was just too much. It was too much for me. It was too much for her. My son, he was a lot older, he was 18 at the time. So he had a different way with this. So he became very protective of me. He was like, I don't want him in around this house. I don't want him around you. I've witnessed what has happened here. You've been so devastated by all of this. I've seen you being very kind to him and no more, ma'am, just like no more. Um, and, for me, that's when micro cheating, which I never knew about, snowballed in my personal life into being a full-blown cheating affair with another woman. Um, and I think the thing that hurt me a lot, Angela, was, you know, we broke up in October. A week later, I found out about it on my birthday, on my 40th. And that Christmas, he said he was going to Dublin. He was hiding her as Tim. He said he was going to Dublin, which he has another friend who was going up there to spend some time. And, I was being very nice. I was like, look, don't worry about it. Aaron and Fia are totally fine. All is good. Go for as long as you need, no problem. And he came back, and on his drive down from Dublin, he rang me bawling, bawling, crying to me, saying he was sorry for the fights over the last year. And I had this compassion. Now, this is when I didn't know he was hiding Mary. I knew he was in contact with his friend Tim. So, and he'd only been up in Dublin with another friend. And I left him come into my house and I like offered him compassion. I remember looking at him going, it's okay, you're being so hard on yourself. Like, we're separating to the best that we can. We're doing the best that we can. But it turned out, like when I discovered that Tim was actually Mary, the reason why he was crying is because he'd spent that weekend, his first weekend, physically with her up in Dublin. And he was ringing me because he had guilt in him because he had just had obviously sex with her for the few days he was up there. And even that, he rang me yeah, it was guilt in him, but that was for me, an emotional manipulation onto me because what did I do? Anyone
Mm.
comes to me with distress, emotional distress, I'm going to like compassionately make you be okay around me, And when I even think back to that, like the level of secrecy and betrayal in it all from this tiny micro cheating energy, like tiny, to then be as manipulative as it was. So the only thing I would say to anyone on this is don't go against your own knowing. If it feels off to you, then it's off, period. Do
Yeah.
not like, I was manipulated. I was told, you're only feeling this way because you are this way. And I listened to all of that. I took too much of it in. But no, my body knew the score. And we know that brilliant book, The Body Holds the Score. My body knew the
Mm.
score. I knew what I was reading. I knew I felt betrayed. And I bypassed past that in me because I doubted me. So that's the only thing I would really like to offer into anyone listen to this who might be going through micro cheating or cheating is anything you have, this knowing that sticks to you, honor the knowing because you're
Yeah.
right. Your knowing is your knowing.
Yeah.
It's your truth in you, you know. So that was my experience of micro cheating. And then yeah.
And then eventual cheating. And Karen, thank you for sharing that because I know it's not easy. And I know, like, and I know the story because we've spoken about it. But,
Yeah.
even as you hear it, like my anxiety goes up, when you think about, you finding the messages. But also, what really bothers me is this fucking name, excuse my language, but this Tim. Would you believe the amount of people that have been cheated on have told me a similar story? How
Yeah.
that person on their phone becomes a different name. So in terms if it's a girl, it's become one of her girlfriends, and if it's a guy, it's one of the boys. And
I
it's
know.
just really interesting because even if a person's going, as you say, out of curiosity through a person's phone, and not in a controlling way, but maybe they're going to bypass like Tim. They're not going to
Yeah.
think. But if it's a girl that's going
Yeah.
to stand out, they're going to go, okay, who's Mary? And what does Mary want? And it's just when you think of the betrayal of that, the sneakiness of that in itself, the lengths that people will go to hide what they're doing is actually shocking. I always think like, why not just end it? Like, why do people play the game, keep going, and cause worse suffering to a person than actually just
Mhm.
having the guts to be upfront and to say this is not working for me. If someone's having feelings for another person and that's starting to develop, then they really need to look at why that's happening. They need to step away first of all if they have a relationship that they have any interest in saving. You cut that cord. And now more than ever, cheating is so much more possible. Before you'd have to go out to the pub or you'd have to go somewhere to connect with somebody, right? Now you can connect with somebody in the safety
Mm.
of your home while your wife or your husband or your partner or whoever is sitting right beside you and you're on social media. It was interesting because I was watching, somebody said, I watched a video and that my feckin', I was saying to you earlier, my algorithm has shown me all these bloody videos, but it was hilarious because I came across a podcast because, I love watching podcasts, all different girls podcasts because we have our podcast and I want
Mm.
to know what they're doing and what they're talking about. It's just kind of part of the interest, I suppose. And one particular podcast I came across and they talked about, I'm not sure I really agree with it, but in their particular opinion, it was cheating. Well, if your partner's going to cheat, and in this case, they were talking about a man, right? And they're saying he will cheat on somebody that's less attractive than you. It will never be someone more attractive. Most of the time, this is what they said. Statistically, it shows someone that's less attractive. And their reason behind that in the podcast I listened to was, a less attractive girl will notice an attractive woman. It's not about the guy. She'll notice the woman. She'll want what that woman has because it's more so validation for her because she feels less than the woman. And I just thought it was interesting. So there's so many different games going on, particularly on
Yeah.
social media when it comes to the opportunity to cheat. So if you're a good looking girl, and they're not even interested in your partner, they will be interested. It'll pique their interest based on this alone, according to these girls. So a different kind of stuff coming up. But you've got people that, I've had it, people sliding into my DMs. I've had people trying to get my attention. I don't even entertain it. So I won't entertain it at all. But unfortunately, there are people that, of course, will entertain it. We're together 18 years. So for me, I don't really notice outside of that. And I don't entertain it because I'm happily married. But I do find it interesting the access people have now. Um, you know, it makes it so easy for them to cheat, I suppose. But at the same time, that doesn't mean just because it's there that everybody acts on it. We have good ones, and we're blessed and everything else. But yeah, I think cheating has changed.
Mm.
I don't know. I think
Yeah.
sometimes it can be blown out of proportion for some people, and not everyone is trying to cheat if they,
Yeah.
obviously like a post or if they're, whatever. But I do think it has made it easier for people to cross that line, and crossing that line is absolutely, for me, would be emotionally telling somebody your own feelings. Like if Stephen was communicating with another woman and telling them,
Yeah.
their emotional stuff, that would be crossing the line for me immediately. And he knows not to do that, and that's something he wouldn't do because we have that communication. I mean, I go back and I think, I was that cheater. I did cheat. it was something that I did. I'm not proud of. I didn't cheat on Stephen, obviously, and I'm with him 18 years. But when I was a teenager, when I was immature, I grew up in an environment where I witnessed it. And to me, that was more the norm than the exception. And it was also a kind of something I grew up with the understanding that, well, they're going to do it to me anyway. So I might as well
Yeah.
just do it myself. That kind of attitude as a teenager was embedded in me. And not all, but most of the people I dated, and I do apologize to anyone I hadn't admitted to at the time, but we were teenagers. It's a long time ago. But I did cheat. And I didn't even think twice about it. It didn't bother me. I had no conscience at the time around that. And it
Yeah.
was only when I dated this guy that was so lovely. He was so kind and he was one that, really good person. And I remember at the time someone new had come into the town and it was shiny and new. And I wanted to be with that person because that person was shiny and new. This will tell you how my teenage mind worked. And so I knew then I didn't want to cheat on this guy because he was a good guy. And I went, oh, this is new for me. I don't want to cheat. Up until that point, I didn't care, but I did care about him and I did care about hurting his feelings. So I broke up with him so I didn't have to cheat on him. So I dumped him. And then, of course, I went out with the other guy who was only there for a wet week. And I knew that. Went out with him. He went back to the country he had come from. And I apologized to that guy years later. I said, I am so sorry I did that. I'm so, because he knew what he was doing. I wasn't cheating, but I might as well have been. He knew exactly what he was doing. And I said, I am so sorry. And he laughed and he said, Jesus, Angela, he said, we were teenagers. Like,
Yeah.
come on. He said, you were
Yes.
innocent. But what I learned, he was the turning point for me. It was in that moment I realized, oh, I do care. I do care about these people. I do care about not doing this. And obviously, then as I grew up and as time went on, I realized that's not what you do. You
Yeah.
don't just cheat on people. You break this cycle now. You don't do this. You treat people with respect and you
Yeah.
end a relationship. You don't continue and play the field. And
Yeah.
then obviously I grew up and I stopped doing that. But there were reasons. There were reasons as
Yeah.
well. There was triggers for it. There was reasons I cheated. And I now know those triggers in my own, like I know what those triggers were for me, even as a teenager, and the reasons that I cheated. And I made sure to do the opposite in my own relationship with Stephen. And all of that was communication, connection, love,
Yeah.
attraction. I mean, for us, like we 18 years, but like Stephen won't mind me saying this, but the only time we're not intimate is when I have my period. I kept
Yeah.
like for 18 years that intimacy, all of those things that I kind of felt make a relationship, communication, connection, talking to each other, but listening, really listening. And like at night time, we'd sit down and watch TV, but we're holding hands every night. If anyone watched us, like we're still wrapped in each other, after 18 years. And it's not a want, or it's not a need as such. It's a want. We want to be like that together. So that's not to say every relationship has problems and no relationship is bulletproof, but at the same time, it is the work you put in. And I'd rather work on this relationship than be looking over my shoulder or his shoulder for another one. And that's what people are missing. I think people are, like I was as a teenager, but grown ass people looking for the next shiny thing. And the problem is they're not willing to sit.
Yeah.
Invest in what's there in front of them, what's there right now. Because, like every relationship changes. The honeymoon phase, the oxytocin or whatever, that starts to fade after a while, that happy hormone, and you get into normal life and real things happen. But it's in that reality is where the magic happens as well. And I think that's what people miss out on. I think that if they're not willing to stay there and really grow with that person, because every relationship will go south anyway if that's the case, if that's your
Yeah.
understanding of it. So I think my advice to people is work on what you do have. And if you are chatting to people online and you are looking for the next shiny thing, stop and think of the other person, but ask yourself why. Why are you doing that? And sometimes it is about ending a relationship. Sometimes it is about moving on. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's my
Yeah.
understanding. That's my take on it.
Yeah. There's two energies that you spoke to, that I'll just grab them and frame it in that lens of, psychotherapeutic lens. So, the podcast you spoke about earlier when you were listening to it and, what the girls were saying in terms of, that, a woman will, will go after your partner if if your partner is attractive. So for me, like I like to look at things, so I call that, we'll call that like the distorted feminine, okay? And why a distorted feminine would even cheat. So a distorted feminine energy is somebody who has this, their core wound would be, fear of not being enough and not being desired. So that's really what they're speaking to. And it's this belief system of I must be desired to be worthy.
Yeah.
So a distorted feminine then the reasons in which the cheating will come from the wounding feelings of abandonment, fear, emptiness, and this emotional hunger in her. So she cheats to feel desired. So she uses attraction as a bandage over deep feelings of unworthiness. Possibly she will cheat for emotional connection. So, often forms an emotional or an energetic bond with somebody because she's missing it within herself. She will cheat when she's feeling unseen. That's really the one that they were speaking to, I feel, when, because I did look at the clip and I was like, yeah, they're touching off of the distorted lens. She cheats to avoid abandonment, you know, and I can relate to that in a way in terms of, having no boundary in myself, outsourcing my worth, and just being with guys and being with guys to feel I'm good enough. So I can totally understand that one. Um, so for me, like, and then if we give that over to like what is a distorted masculine energy and why he would cheat, and a lot of the time with the male energy, their core wound is a fear of inadequacy, believe it or not. And if you sit back from a fear of inadequacy, like we have our men, have grown up under this collective energy of boys don't cry. So they have been demasculated. And a healthy masculine loves to feel adequate. They love to feel that they are the problem solver, that they're the fixer, they're the action orientated energy. That's the frequency of the masculine energy. So a distorted masculine will have, this genuine fear of inadequacy. And then their shadow belief, like their core belief is, I need to feel like I'm enough. So then the distortion of the masculine when he cheats, he is cheating to escape responsibility. He doesn't want to get tied down. He doesn't want to have to commit. He cheats to inflate his ego. Oh, I had this one last night. I had that one. I got with this one. He cheats from emotional numbness. He's disconnected from his feelings, which again goes back to boys don't cry. When boys are not allowed to have access to their vulnerability, it creates an unhealthy ego in them and it disassociates them from their feelings. And then sex can become a way to bypass having to feel completely for men. We all know this one. They'll cheat because they don't want commitment. We do know that one out there. And also a distorted energy and a masculine will cheat because it's control. It gives them a sense of power that they're doing this, they're in control of the setup. So, and then when I like to look at it that way and to understand it, for me, then yes, if a relationship is not healthy, sometimes a relationship, I mean, that sometimes, like when I now look back based off of where I am today, when I look back on that relationship of 14 years, I would say, if I jump it up a little level, I would say we were each other's mirror. We mirrored in each other's wounded energies. So we were actually connecting from distortion more so than healthiness. I activated in him his own trauma wounds. He activated it again in me, my trauma wounds. So you could say it was a trauma bond, and at a level, yeah. We brought out the parts in us. So, like in my marriage, my wounded part in me doesn't trigger my husband. He actually shows up to that wounded energy in me with great compassion and stability that it actually regulates me being around my husband. Whereas in the other relationships, it really dysregulated me because we weren't. So when I think of distortion versus healthy, and you spoke on healthy energies and you said it, like you named it about your own, like obviously healthy masculine and feminine energy in a relationship will create clear boundaries, 100%.
Yeah.
Emotional honesty, Absolutely. The safety of that when we can speak to the truth of how we're feeling. And like even when I shared that time about my body issue coming up, having sex with Jeff, as we all know, I'm in doggy position and he's having sex, and I'm like, oh my God, does he think my ass is fat? And as I said to you, based on the actions of slapping my ass and the way he was having sex with me, clearly not. But afterwards, instead of me having this shame over my body, I was able to sit there naked and say to him, I actually had a moment where fucking fear came up in me, and I really, it disconnected me from our intimacy of sex. And he was beautiful in how he handled that, and it was gorgeous. And after that, I just, that has no room in my head anymore. Thank
Yeah.
God, you know.
Yeah.
Um, which is sexual integrity. That's what a healthy masculine feminine will do. They'll actually bring out this beautiful sexual integrity. So actually, sexual discovery and sexual play and sexual bringing toys into the relationship, bringing role play in, bringing in other means of sexual turn on is actually
Oh,
healthy.
you were going to say bringing in another person there for a second, Karen.
Well, if that's
Another.
part of the fantasy and it's
God, what?
maturely consented, you
I was just wondering there for a second. There was something you hadn't told me about. Was that a first?
know. Self-worth isn't
Yeah.
outsourced in the
Yeah.
relationship, and there is this mutual safety and loyalty, and there is a true intimacy. So, like when you won't be in a beautiful relationship with all of those beautiful components, and you want to exit. That
Yeah.
won't even be part
Exactly.
of the relationship.
Yeah.
When you want to exit a relationship, I would be saying to anyone, it's because, something. And I remember actually with my partner, 14 years, having a deeper knowing of, I don't think we're for each other. But because, I had my beautiful daughter, I was like, oh no, the family, he's a good guy, this, and that. I remember there were moments in there where I was convincing myself to stay. Now I can honestly step back from that and go, you know what? The girl I was then, when I met him at 27, and we left when I was 40, to the woman I am now, who's like 5 years with my husband, like the version I am today compared to the girl I was at 27 or even at 40, I am such a different woman. Like
Yeah.
I'm such a different woman because of the inner work, the inner looking, the inner healing. Even though I was on that journey since I'm 22 of inner healing, but in that dynamic with my ex-partner, I was still in my woundedness, in my distortions, and so was he. So if anyone is in a relationship and they're really, really starting to like not feel the alignment of it, I would say there is wisdom to that too. If a person begins to evolve in the relationship and do the inner work and the other person doesn't, you know, then a relationship will begin to separate energetically. It's like a magnet in
Yeah.
science. You can't force two magnets to be together. So it's not even personal to anybody. It's
Yeah.
energetic. It's the frequency you're emanating out of and from based on the inner work that you do with yourself. So if
Yeah.
you love yourself, for example, out of let's say you say, I love myself a 6 out of 10, you won't survive with a guy who's a 3 or a 4 out
Yeah.
of because energetically they're at a different calibration to you.
Yeah.
If you're with a guy who, and I'm not talking about self-love guys in this, oh, I'm all vain. That's not what self-love is. Self-love is you will respect yourself, you will have great boundaries, you will be respectful to the energy of another person, you will take great care of your own sacred needs. That's what self-love really is. So if you're a 6 and you're with somebody who's like an 8 or 9, then there's the invitation to come to know yourself in such expansion that you come up into that frequency. So, like for me, I feel, at the moment, there is so much out there, and you named it, there's so much game playing out there. And that is a great distractor in that you can get washed up in the hurricane of all of that and not know yourself even more in the chaos of that. Because I would hate to be single trying to navigate the world out there because there's such games out there. I would invite people, come home, come to yourself, Come and get to know who it is that you are, truly who you are. Not who you think you need to be for everybody else, but who are you in here? Who is this true person inside? What is their passion? What is their desires in life? What's their path in life? Get to know him or her, who you are based on your sex orientation. Get to know them. And once you know you, you're going to know what you want in a relationship. You're going to know who it is that you are and what you bring to that relationship. And you're going to know if that relationship feels right for you or not, you know.
Yeah.
That would
And
be my
also,
comes
And
in.
also, I think just to look at the whole aspect for people that might be kind of living in that fear of somebody cheating on them,
Yeah.
oh, what if they cheat on me? And they kind of live in that discomfort where they're not settled enough in the relationship because of past events or because of their own way of being, to kind of look at it and go, that's no way to live. I'd rather be present in my relationship to just enjoy it for what it is and never to think on those lines or to worry whether someone I love is going to cheat on me, um, because that's no way to live either. To be present, to enjoy what it is, what way your relationship is. Don't be spending your time obsessing and wondering over it as well, because that's no way to be in a space, and keep that communication going, and keep the honesty going. That's what I love about, even my own relationship. We talk, we're honest with each other, we share our feelings, and there's no games. I can't do games, not after fucking 18 years anyway. But it is about being vocal about things that you're not happy with and keeping just the honesty alive. But ultimately, the amount of people that get upset over small things as well, just think it's important to live your life, be side by side, stop worrying. Because I have somebody that has said to me, "Oh, I'm so worried about him cheating, and I'm checking his phone and I'm doing this and I'm doing that." And I'm like, "But you're unhappy, you're miserable because you're not in the relationship. You're so busy worrying about what could happen to your relationship that you're not able to enjoy it." And since she let that kind of feeling go, and since she stopped overthinking and worrying about it, her relationship is blossoming. She's having a great time. They're really happy, and he doesn't feel like he has to kind of be questioned or answering things that he's not doing, and she's really happy there in that space. And yeah, I think it's just important to kind of enjoy the space that you're in. If you're in that relationship, none of us know what's going to happen. None of us know if people are going to cheat at the end of the day. Things happen, relationships break down, life shit happens. And I just be present. That's all I would say to people. Just stay there. But as Karen was saying, if you are picking up on something and if there is something coming up for you, definitely don't ignore it. That's happening for a reason as well. So yeah, that would be my advice. And
Yeah.
just, yeah, be the star of your own show. I think we fucking obsess so much about the relationship and the other person, and I don't know, like, and like, I like that, my algorithm. I'm gonna have to go back in and change that now because I'm being bombarded with this shit. It's driving me mental. I'm like, I don't care about that. I don't even want to watch it. But it just made me go, like, this stuff is even designed to make women paranoid, particularly because these particular things, all of this was like, I was going, oh my God, like, men won't be allowed to look bloody sideways by the
Yeah.
time this stuff is finished as well. And that's what really came up strong for me. A man is going to be afraid to look in a different direction because you've got these videos where, like some video on Instagram, how this girl is sitting at the dinner with her boyfriend, and every other man is looking at these three women that have walked into the restaurant. This girl herself is beautiful, and she looks at her partner, and he doesn't look at these other women. He's just looking at her. And, she's like, this is amazing and the celebration. And then I'm looking at the comments and how they're all thinking this. And I'm thinking, my God, like men are literally scared now to even
Yeah.
look at a woman. And like they're programmed in their own way to look. Yes, not to be obvious about it. Jesus, like, I mean, if a beautiful woman comes into a room, my husband looks, I look too, because beauty is
Yeah.
something that we're drawn to, and it's natural. But it's gone to the stage now where people are getting so upset by that, even. So I'm wondering, all of this kind of, you can't do this, you can't do that. Men are going to be in
Yeah.
such a tizzy that they're going to be afraid to leave their house by the time, we're finished with them. That's what it feels like. So my thinking is, it goes back to, if Stephen is out there, or anyone is out there, once they're not emotionally involved with somebody, or
Yeah.
obviously the obvious stuff, then it's okay. I
Like,
think life is fucking short. I'd rather, like, we need to enjoy it. We're so worried about stuff that hasn't even happened, as human beings, and creating stuff that we're not really living.
yeah. Like, if anything, just to like capture what you're saying there, because it's important. Like, guys, I would say be careful what you're listening to and watching, number one. A lot of the things out there are built through the distorted lens to make you feel inadequate, insecure, vulnerable, and needy, so then that other things can be pushed upon you through the marketing world. Number one, if you're feeling insecure or vulnerable or anything, I would say start with securing the self with the self within. Take the partner down off the pedestal. Put your own self up on the pedestal. Become your own deity. Worship on your own self in a beautiful way. Because you're right there, a lot of the times we cannot idealize the other partner. Without a boundary, we can get lost into the world of the
Yeah.
other partner where we're in their world doing it all for them. Just just if we can, just take time out to look at what am I looking at? What am I watching? Is this healthily informing me, or is it stirring me up even more? Am I vulnerability? Am I insecurity? If it stirs you up in a way where it makes you more apprehensive and more questioning, I would say don't lean into those things.
Yeah.
I won't go near anything. And it's not that I'm an avoider. I know myself too well. I know that I would rather lean into the things that make me go into expansion, regulation, safety, and groundedness. They're the things I like to watch, listen to. They're the only things I'm interested in. It is hard enough being a human being navigating this world. And it's even harder then when we are not in a good friendship with ourselves, and because we're the only ones to take ourselves through this path, as me and too fucking
Yeah.
deeply, we know that. So for me, it's like, yeah, just absolutely take care of yourself. What are you listening to? What are you allowing yourself to be educated by? And the only, you know thing to gauge that off it is how it makes you feel. That's probably the best thing I can say on that. But like, out of everything else that was shared here tonight, I just want to say to our listeners, and to Angela as well, always, I absolutely adore sitting into these spaces with Angela, because we never know where we're going to go when we start talking. We just don't know where we end up in the talk. But I do want to thank everyone for like sitting into the space, and into this conversation. And, cheating and micro cheating can feel like jagged edges in the heart, tender, confusing, and often loaded with shame. Our intention with me and Angela is never to judge, but to bring awareness to the subtle ways we can disconnect from ourselves and from those around us that we love. Remember, every relational rupture is also an invitation back to honesty, to clarity, to emotional responsibility, and ultimately to deeper self love. When we understand our patterns, we can reclaim our own power in any dynamic that we are in. Um, for me, I just want to say thank you again to everyone for listening, and for Angela for choosing this topic. For play, this was a great topic. Um, Angela, is there anything you want to say on it?
No, I think
Close
I
it
think we've
out.
said I think we've said lots there. I think it's a lot, it's food for thought. I think going back to that, the most important part is to work on yourself, as you say as well. Just kind of champion yourself, put yourself up on that pedestal. Like, if you nurture yourself, the more you nurture yourself, the less tolerant you'll be if anyone else not doing it for you. But you'll be more, you'll really look after yourself. And the more we build ourselves, when somebody comes in and something happens, whether it's a betrayal or someone knocks us over, the less hard we'll fall. Because
Yeah.
we'll have looked after ourselves, we'll have built a resilience, we'll have such a faith and strength in ourselves that we will get up a whole lot faster. It won't be as detrimental because you've done the work on yourself and you've looked after yourself. And that would be my thinking. Um, and champion yourself. We pour so much energy into our loved one. And I do that a lot with my husband. I pour a lot of energy into him, but I'm also conscious of making sure I'm nurturing myself as well. And that's so important, doing for myself. And, we don't do that often enough when we have kids and a husband or a partner. But it's really important to find things that nurture you and to feed your soul and look after you. And that's what I'm doing. And it's lovely because we need that individual stuff as well. We're independent, not codependent. And that's the important thing, to be independent of each other. So you can survive without the other, but you chose to be with each other. And that's the main thing.
Beautiful. So, guys, we are Karen and Angela, and this is Pink is Power. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with anyone who you know needs these words. You can subscribe to us as well, and so that way you never miss out on these honest conversations. You can connect with us through Instagram on our Instagram page, Pink is Power. You can subscribe to us. We are up on YouTube as well, so you get to hear us on YouTube. We're on, oh yeah, we're only gone up on Apple Podcasts today, which is great, and we're on Spotify. Until next time, stay true, stay open, and stay in your power. Bye for now, everybody.